Good evening. On behalf of the Scottsbluff-Gering United Chamber of Commerce, welcome to this evening's candidate forum for the 2022 primary election. This candidates forum features individuals running for Gering Public Schools Board of Education. This candidates forum is one of several being presented by the Government Affairs Committee of the Scottsbluff-Gering United Chamber of Commerce. Along with my co-chair Don Wolf, my name is Bill Boyer, and we appreciate you joining me. We would like to thank the Rural Radio Scottsbluff staff for recording this forum so you can view it, as well as the Gering Civic Center for hosting us this evening. As a reminder, there are 12 candidates running for Gering Public Schools Board of Education. In the May 10th primary election, you will be allowed to vote for 3 candidates. The top 6 vote getters in the primary election will advance to the November general election. Before we meet the candidates, I'd like to go over the format for this forum. Before we began recording, the candidates randomly chose the order that they will be seated and will be introduced. We'll begin by asking a question, and each candidate will be given 90 seconds to respond. Then there will be an optional 30-second rebuttal for each candidate following the answer. After the final question, each candidate will be allowed 1 minute for a closing statement. There are timers in the room from Gering Public Schools, and each candidate has been informed of the format and the rules prior to tonight. None of the questions have been given to the candidates in advance. Now let's meet the candidates for the forum for the Gering Public Schools Board of Education. Colleen Woodward, Brandon Smith, Gloria Rita Morales, Rick Kinnaman, John Mazer, Greg Troutman, Mike Abley, Krista Baird, Brian Copsey. James Jackson, Justin Reinmuth, and Jordan Long Sr. were unable to attend tonight's forum. Per the rules, statements can be read for those candidates who were unable to attend. Jordan Long Sr. did not submit a statement to be read, but the other 2 candidates did, and I will read those both now. First, from James Jackson. First of all, thank you for allowing me to send a statement instead of attending. I am unable to attend the forum because I am working. One of our officers just had a baby, and taking time off to attend was not feasible. My name is James Jackson. I moved to the Valley in 1995 from Colorado. I am a sergeant with the Gering Police Department and have worked for the department for over 23 years. I have 3 children, 2 of which are still enrolled in Gering Public Schools. Focusing on the betterment of the community, I have volunteered my time with the Golden Halo Foundation, Midwest Theater, and the Gering High School Bond Improvement. I have an associate's degree from Trinidad State Junior College and a bachelor's degree from Bethel University. As we know, I am asking to be elected into one of 3 spots on the Gering School Board. This term, there are 12 different candidates. I haven't been happy with some of the decisions that the board has been making, and rather than complaining about the issues, I decided to try to do something about it. Since 11 others are throwing their hat into the ring, I feel that this shows that I am probably not alone in wanting to make a change with the school board. I've received a number of phone calls after it was announced that I was running for school board. I will address the most common questions I have been asked. I am pro-vaccination. I am anti-mandate for both masks and for vaccines. All of those decisions should be made with you, your family, and your healthcare provider, not the government on any level. I did not believe Rocky Schneider should have lost his job. I was very disappointed with the board for making that decision. Conversely, I love the new principal, Mario Chavez, and I believe that he will do great things for the school and our community. I oppose to teaching critical race theory in our schools. I firmly believe that it is necessary to teach our children about history, from the marvelous achievements to the reprehensible things that we have done in our past. As the old saying goes, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I've had my children come home and tell me their teachers' political views and how sometimes my children have felt targeted by those teachers. It is my belief that if students know a teacher's political views, the teacher has failed in their job. I want our children to be taught how to think, not what to think. The last issue that I think I would like to address is the current grading system. I believe that an A should be 100 to 90%, a B 80 to 89%, a C 70 to 79%, a D 60 to 69%, as with the 4.0 letter system. I was informed that the current system was originally developed for college prep. At colleges and universities, follow the 4.0 letter system. Getting into college can be very competitive, and if a Gering student has a 93% in a subject and have a B on their transcript. If a Scottsbluff student had a 93% in the same subject, they would have an A. This is unfair to our Gering students. There are many challenges that lie ahead for Gering Public Schools. I would like to be the voice of our community and make those decisions based on the goals and objectives of our community and in line with the vision of the Gering Public Schools. If my beliefs fall alongside yours, I would love to have your vote. Thank you, James Jackson. And from Justin Reinmuth. Hi, my name is Justin Reinmuth, and I am running for the Gering School Board. Born and raised in the Valley, graduate and former employee of Gering High School, I feel it's clear to say I'm vested in the community. Over my tenure at GHS, I had the pleasure of teaching in 3 buildings, 9 classrooms, and 16 different disciplines. Becoming a teacher for Gering Public Schools was a dream of mine, and I'll always be grateful for the experiences, students, and friendships forged. I am running for the Gering School Board in hopes of positive change. Gering was and is an amazing school district and community. Although it's fair to say Gering has had a few bumps and bruises these past couple of years, it's also fair to say that the community is unaware at times of the hours and commitment put forth by staff and students. I feel that we've become more interested in seeing our community members fail than watch them flourish. My opinion is that we need to let the teachers engage, enrich, and explore the content area that they've mastered, let the parents and students have an active presence in school decisions, and refrain from the latest fad in education being implemented as a fix to struggling test scores. Thank you, Justin Reinmuth. Now we will begin with our first question, and we will start with Colleen. Colleen, what prompted you to run for this position?
I was prompted to run for this position because I've been at Gering for 7 years as a substitute. And at the time I started at Gering, they had just sent 3 students to service academies. Cell phones were not a problem. Chromebooks were on a cart. Not everybody had one. People were afraid. Students were afraid to go to the principal, so they behaved. And it was generally a really nice place to work. And over the last 7 years, I've seen it decline to where now we have 3 alternative schools for kids who don't care, and we can't send anyone to a service academy. Nobody qualifies. And so I'd like to see Gering back up to the top of the academic ladder.
Brandon, what prompted you to run for this position?
Many of the same things that were described in the 2 letters. I've born and raised here as well. Did some of my college here, actually did all my college here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln to get my BSN. I currently have 2 kids enrolled. Between mandates and the way that board has continued with the way and the path they've been going, even against a lot of parents' wishes and stuff, it prompted me to do like they said. Instead of complaining about it and whining about it, it's time for me to step up and try to do something about it.
Thank you. Gloria, what prompted you to run for this position?
Hi, I decided to run for this position to bring my voice, bring a different set of eyes. I represent the minority culture. I also have seen lots of changes. I have a 23-year-old all the way down to a 7-year-old. So I'd really like to bring my thoughts to the table, see what is going on behind closed doors, or even behind, I know they're open meetings, but still what is prompting our board currently to make the decisions that they are making, and to voice my opinions and such. And that's why I decided to run.
Thank you. Rick, what prompted you to run for this position?
Well, I've been a longtime teacher and coach here in Gering. I've seen a lot of changes, especially in the last few years. I don't believe that, without pointing fingers, that Gering schools are moving forward as they should. I think there's been some decisions that have adversely affected progress, and I think maybe I can give some insight from the inside.
Thank you. John, what prompted you to run for this position?
I believe that education is the lifeblood of our community. I believe I have the experience and the diversity to help the board move this district in a positive direction. I've served on many boards in the past. Currently, I guess my past board experience is like Scottsbluff County Planning Commission. I've been a director for the Nebraska Dried Bean Growers Association, various other boards. Currently, I'm not serving on any boards because I understand this, it is, so it's a 2-day-a-month meetings. I know it involves a lot more than that. I'm fortunate in my life to have the time now to dedicate to the school board and do my homework prior to the meetings so that the meetings can get their business done and be a well-informed board member. Now, for last but not least, there's a lot of exciting things going on in Gering Public Schools. I think we're very fortunate. We have a new high school. We have, the career academies, a new FFA program. I think the block schedule is a great thing. I mean, we've got 120 kids currently that have went through the WNCC classes with a 90% pass rate. So there's a lot of positive things going on in the Gering Public Schools. I'd like to be a part of ushering in the future and being a positive role model in the community.
Thank you. Greg, what prompted you to run for this position?
I decided to run for this position because I'm a Gering native. I graduated from Gering. My wife taught at the high school for 14 years, so I kind of can view it through two lenses, both the parent lens and the educator lens through talking to her and her friends. So I think I have a lot of valuable input. I do run two businesses in town, and so, running a small business, I'm the marketing department, I'm the advertising, or the accounting department, the decisions. I think I have a lot to lend to the board as far as professionalism and expertise. I also think that Gering Public Schools is a great place to go to school. I've seen multiple of my friends run their own businesses and be successful. I've seen multiple people go into the academies. I've seen multiple people go straight into careers and be successful. And I would like to see Gering Public Schools continue on that path of being a great place to not only learn, but learn how to learn. And I think I could lend both openness to the board. I think I have a skill to listen to varying viewpoints and then weigh my decision based on both what I've heard and what I believe equally. So I think I could be an asset to Gering and Gering Public Schools.
Thank you. Mike, what prompted you to run for this position?
Pretty much the same things as what other people have said. I have 3 daughters in the school system. That's my main driving force behind this. My daughters have done a lot of great things in Gering. They love being at Guile Elementary. But we've also seen some things that have affected them negatively. And, like other people have said, instead of complaining about something, step up to the plate and do something about it. I have a way of seeing things from both sides to where I can be partial and objective if I need to be. And I think that's something that the school board needs is people that can see things from both sides and be able to judge fairly and look at things in a fair manner.
Thank you. Krista, what prompted you to run for this position?
I attended a school board meeting last fall with some of the same concerns that have been spoken about here today. But I think what was alarming to me was the way in which there were several that went about dealing with the issues that they had and the confrontation. I was very grateful that there wasn't any children present at that particular board meeting. And it made me stop and think about the fact that I think that as a community as a whole, and sometimes if you haven't served on a board, you might not understand the dynamics of a board. And a school board is an especially unique in that they don't hold the power that you might think that they do. And it takes somebody that is able to look at things and step back and look for what not only the best for your children, but what's the best for the children of this entire district. And we have underserved children. We have children that don't have parental influence in their home, and the parents that aren't speaking on their behalf. And it's going to take a voice that's going to speak for them as well. And that's why I'm running, to be a voice for not just my own children, who I've had 4 that have gone through Gering Public Schools, but for all the children of
Thank
Gering
you.
Public Schools.
Thank you. Brian, what prompted you to run for this position?
Well, originally, when I first ran for Gering School Boards, I was part of a Leadership Nebraska program, and one of their tenets was education, and that kind of got me interested in how I might be able to give back. And when I got back, I thought, you know, Gering Public Schools was such an influence on my life, and all 4 of our kids were in Gering schools, and so I decided that was a way I could give back to my community and back to Gering. So I ran for school board. Decided to continue to run again. It's been difficult, but it's a work of passion, and we've done a lot of hard work. We're not there yet. People have addressed the issues. We're surrounded by a great administrative team. We have got the best teachers in the state. We have wonderful kids. We are on a great path, but we have a lot of work left to do. And so I hope to continue that work, and it's my passion that keeps driving me, and it's what continues us to put in the hours we do each month to work towards that vision of making Gering the best district it can be.
Thank you. Before we move to our next question, does anyone need an additional 30 seconds? Okay. Brandon, the next question is for you to start. What is your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
I believe that parental involvement is essential. Our teachers are wonderful. They dedicate a lot of time in the classroom, outside of the classroom, for my kid and for everybody's kid. And it's a wonderful thing. They don't always get the appreciation they deserve. But on the other hand, they spend a certain amount of time with my kid, and I spend the rest of it with them. I know my kid. I understand my kid. And fitting them into boxes and certain things isn't always the right thing. Now, it's always nice to have the ability as a parent to talk to your kid and to talk to the teachers and give your input. Some of the teachers I've talked to through this last year and some of these experiences have shown that they love parental involvement. They like to hear from the parents because it gives them a semblance of what they're doing and where they're headed and how well they're doing with a particular kid or a particular situation. So I believe that it's an integral role. It's not the only role, but I do believe it's an integral role, and we need to keep power with parents and students as well.
Thank you. Gloria, what is your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
I believe it's very necessary. Parents know their children best. They know where they want their children to be in the future, where they want to see their path to go. So it's necessary for them, and just overall, it's very important.
Thank you. Rick, what is your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
It is necessary. I think a lot of the parents are also community leaders and business owners, and I think those are the careers that many of our students pursue. So I think they should have a say in the curricula that we teach and how we teach it and what they need to know.
Thank you. John, what's your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
I think it's very important. I know my wife is also a teacher, and she loves when parents want to get involved, ask questions. We as board members, or if we would be selected as board members, we are the liaison between the public. That's our job, to listen to the parents. That's just another avenue to bring to the board meetings, so we can decide what's the best route to go with the curriculum. We're here representing the masses.
Greg, what is your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
I think parental involvement is an interesting term. I think sometimes it gets misinterpreted as parental control or decision-making. I think involvement is very important. I think that means that you're taking an active part in your child's education, which is essential. right? You know things about your child that maybe your teachers don't have a chance to get to know, and help them grow. Now, that doesn't mean that the board, if I'm on it, can work outside the box that is set for us in curricula. But I do think it's important to listen to the input of parents and then weigh whether that can fit inside of our box that we get to work in. I think parental involvement is important in everything. I teach CCD at my church, and as an active teacher in that, if it's not shown and demonstrated and valued at home, the faith doesn't continue. And I think the education of our kids is the exact same. You can complain up and down about your teachers, staff, administrators, and curricula all you want, but unless we're actually involved, which you said, I believe that's essential because that's where it's supported at home, it's modeled at home, and it's valued at home. And hopefully as a board member, I can bring that back to the schools also, that we value our education, not just in the classroom, but in life, because that's where it's going to serve us the best. So yes, I totally agree with parental involvement in schools.
Thank you. Mike, what is your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
Well, I think Greg said it best, actually. I don't know really how to improve upon that, but yes, like he said, parents should be involved in that, because if the children aren't willing to learn a certain subject until the parents take an active role in that and make it exciting for them and make them want to learn something more, the kids aren't going to thrive in that. I think my children do a lot better when I actually explain concepts to them with science or math or other things and get them excited with it. So, yeah, I do believe that parent involvement is very important.
Krista, what is your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
Absolutely, involvement is necessary. And so I'll share, I'm a volunteer for CASA, and I have these darling little boys that I'm presently their CASA advocate, and I'm who's going to the parent-teacher conferences. I'm the one that's going in and emailing with their teachers right now, and I'm not their parent, but I'm the adult that is involved and is making those efforts on their behalf. And to see the difference that that is making in their lives, and the difference that their teacher is, how their teacher is reacting and dealing with them, knowing that there is an adult that is aware of them and is behind them, is making a huge impact. And I think that happens as parents when we're involved. Not when we're overtaking, but when we are present. When teachers and educators and staff and administration know that as parents that we're aware and that we're involved in what is happening in our children's education and in their lives, it has an impact. And so I absolutely believe in parent involvement.
Brian, what is your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
Well, I think Greg stated a very important point, is that parent involvement in curriculum and then parent involvement are two very distinct issues. Parent involvement in curriculum is an issue that we have policies for, where they can visit with at the teacher level if they have concerns or issues, where they can take that up with teachers, administrators, where there is a definite policy of development of that curriculum as it goes through the district, to develop those policies for specific curriculum ideas and how that's developed. Parental involvement, I think if you talk to most teachers, if they go to parent-teacher conferences, they would want every parent there, and it just doesn't happen. And as Krista stated at the beginning, there's a lot of kids that don't have any parental involvement. And so I think that's what, as a board member, you have to understand, and really open my eyes on the board, is that we have nearly 2,000 kids in the district, and not everybody has that influence at home, and you have to learn how to balance all of those different economic, social backgrounds merged into a district and teach all of them effectively and represent them equally. And it's difficult, but we need to try and do it and provide them involvement that they need.
Thank you. Colleen, what is your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
Well, I believe that parental involvement is utmost important, obviously very, very important, because kids belong to their parents. They don't belong to the school district. And it is the responsibility of the parents to educate the kids, to make sure their kids get a good education, whether they send them to public school or whatever they choose to do. And so I think that that is very important. I also think after going to board meetings for the last 7 months and having a family full of teachers, so I've heard about it from the time I could walk, I think sometimes it's good for parents to make sure that teachers and administrators don't necessarily go off on bandwagons. And Gering has been very good not to do that. But it's easy to see, oh, this is a new fad in education, let's go with it. And I think it's important for parents to step in and go, wait a minute, what are we doing this and why are we doing this and what is the ultimate goal? Our ultimate goal at Gering is to produce leaders, contributing members of society, and people that are going to succeed in the world. And so we need to make sure that the curriculum we're coming up with is actually achieving those goals.
Thank you. Anyone else with something to add on a rebuttal? Go ahead, Brandon.
Not so much a rebuttal as an addition. If you look at the numbers, I don't have them in front of me because I didn't know the questions, but the increased amount of kids that are being pulled from schools, including our district, and put into homeschooling is indicative that parents believe that their role should be greater. And although there is policies, as Koski said, and there are hoops and stuff to jump through, and not all curriculum comes just from our local, it comes down from state and federal, it is fairly obvious that parents are starting to take control, whether administrations or school boards or whatever want them to or not.
Thank you. Anybody else on the top row? If not, we'll go to Brian.
First of all, there is no curriculum developed at the federal or state level that we do not approve. Curriculum is developed at the local level, and is approved at the board level, and our enrollment numbers are up. So we have not seen any decrease in our numbers.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to our next question. Gloria, we'll start with you on this one. The Career Academy is branched into a number of different educational areas. What other career pathways would you like to see developed?
I would like to see, besides the Career Academy, some common sense, normal education. Teaching kids how to do their tax refunds, teaching kids how to invest in, to grow their portfolios. Classes such as that as an adult, I should have started a long time ago. I wish I would have known sooner. And if a lot of those basic skills that I am using more as an adult that like I said, I wish I would have started sooner. I wish they would bring some of those back or actually introduce some of those besides the Career Academy.
Okay. Rick, the Career Academy is branched into a number of different educational areas. What other career pathways would you like to see developed?
I'm not sure that I'd like to see too many more developed. Some of our classes have pretty small numbers in them now. I think I would like to see the vocational classes become stronger as they once were. I think most of our students end up in a vocational situation or career field more and more. That's who builds your houses, fixes your cars, and that sort of thing. As far as any others that could be developed, I think we could just expand on what we have. For example, in the construction field, we could add some plumbing or electricity, that sort of thing. I think those are the things that we need to add in our pathways.
John, what other career pathways would you like to see developed?
I agree with Rick. I think the future, there is a lot of demand for the vocational trades. And looking at the academies that we have now, I I think they're plenty broad enough that, you know, the healthcare, that covers a huge number of jobs. Maybe, you know, the financial, the personal finance, I agree with you on that. I think, you know, there's way too many people, and there's adults, I mean, they don't know how to balance a checkbook or put together a budget, or, you know, like you said, do their taxes. I think that is a wonderful, you know, even at the college level. I mean, I really don't think that, you know, that's been taught very well. You know, the interest, you know, the way loans are written. I think that's very, you know, a thing that the education system has missed out on, and I'd like to see that improved on.
Thank you. Greg, what other career pathways would you like to see developed?
Honestly, I don't have any in particular because I'm not completely versed in that. I would lean on Rick and his experience in the vocational area. But I will say that being in fireworks taught me to lean on professionals. I don't know how to set up the safest fireworks store when I got into it when I was 19 years old. So I leaned on the state fire marshal for recommendations. I leaned on inspections to get better, right? My inspections weren't always perfect, but I didn't view them as an attack on myself, but rather how I could better my business. And I think Gering Public Schools is a lot alike, where we have great administrators, both at the central office on down, where I can lean on their expertise and what they're seeing with the kids and what we need to add, and I would lean on them for that advice. I will also tell you that I'm a strong believer that public school teaches you how to learn, and it's impossible to cast this net over everything our kids should or will need to know. However, if we continue to teach them how to learn, not how to think or what to think, but how to learn, they can learn how to look it up, how to find it, how to find those resources or professionals that they need to lean on. So I would go more that direction, that we need to lean on our professionals and our kids' input, and that's where parental experience and advice can come into play also to help us figure out what niche needs to be hit next.
Thank you. Mike, what other areas, career pathways would you like to see developed?
I'm going to agree with Rick on this one as well. Tradespeople are very needed, essential roles within our communities. And, you know, maybe getting kids more involved into understanding that without going to college and going into a trade, you know, you're not going into massive student debt. That's a big issue right now. You know, you can go into a trade and be able to learn your trade while making money. I think that's a great opportunity for a lot of people that maybe don't want to go to college right away. So something that, a focus on that, I think, would be something that we should bring back into the school systems. You know, because it is a needed role and it is a great way to learn a lot of different things and still live and serve a community.
Thank you. Krista, what other career pathways would you like to see developed?
Well, this is an interesting question, considering I sat at a table last night at a high school basketball banquet and talked with some juniors and sophomores and juniors for next year about what they would like to see. And I know that we have a health science program that's in it, but it's in its beginning stages. For those pre-nursing students, they would like to see that they graduate with an LPN, not LPN, but with their CNN. Is it CNA? Yes, thank you. That they graduate from high school with their CNA license so that they are able to work and make money while they're pursuing their nursing degree. My daughter in particular, she would like to, she was in the middle of, when a particular teacher at Gering High School left, she was in the middle of learning some ethical hacking and those things, which are no longer available at Gering High School, and so would like to see that also continue. Obviously, a big proponent of the vocation as well, as I'm come from a family, I have electricians and plumbers, but I think that I'm a big proponent on building on what we already have and what we have began.
Thank you. Brian, what other career pathways would you like to see developed?
Well, we've done a lot of heavy lifting over the last several years to get Gering where we are today with our career pathways. We heard from our community. We recently have our ag program, started our FFA program, which was much sorely needed and took a long time to get there. Our ag program is now, we're producing food that we use in our own cafeteria. We're not quite fully self-sufficient, but we're getting close. We have our aviation pathway program, which this last year we were one of 5 schools in the country that got a $500,000 grant towards our aviation program. As far as wants and needs, we need to recognize the need, as was stated earlier, that many of these kids need to be identified that they're not going to pursue, maybe they can't afford, but they are going to pursue a vocation. Our construction program was certified this past fall for kids to pursue their construction management degree. We need to expand that for drywalling, electrical, plumbing as well. And we need to work on our mechanical side for diesel mechanics, small engine repair, and potential electric car repair for the future. So we need to work on that, and those are goals we have for those programs as we develop the VOTEC side of that equation as well.
Thank you, Brian. Colleen, what other career pathways would you like to see developed?
Well, I have to agree with Rick. I've subbed in a lot of Rick's classes, and he's in good company with Mike Rowe, that I totally believe that we really need to push on the trades. My husband's a contractor, and we need people in the trades. That needs to be an expansion, and that needs to be maybe not interfered with. I know there's some scheduling conflicts at the high school with that. But in order to get them up there and get them proficient, after having spent 3 long-term subs in English, I would really like our kids to be at a better rate of reading, writing, and basic communication. We really have a problem with that. Kids aren't reading, they don't like to read, they don't read well, they can't do basic math, and they can't write a paper to save their necks. And so while those are parts of the trades, you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to read. If you can't read directions, you're not going to be able to plumb. And so while I want to see the trades definitely where I believe we really need to push, we also need to get the basics going on. And I would like to find out where we're losing that, because when I get them at the high school, they're not proficient. Where is that happening? I would really like to find out and take care of that issue for the basics. And personal finance. Got to have personal finance in there.
Thank you. Brandon, what other career pathways would you like to see developed?
I think everybody pretty much took care of it. And I'm glad Brian spoke before me, because I got to know all the extra programs that I didn't know that they were getting going. I do believe that it's a continued emphasis on the fact that college isn't the end-all be-all. College is perfect for a lot, but it's not perfect for everybody, and we need to allow kids to be self-confident in whatever role they choose to do. I have a 15-year-old at home. I try to teach him the trade stuff all the time. I've done everything from plumbing, tin work, I've done sheetrock, general construction, and it's something I can always fall back on. You know, if I ever happen to change jobs, or I'm in between jobs, or something happens, I always have the ability to go back to that. And it's an industry that's always going to be there. You know, people always need a toilet. People always need their rooms redone, or a house built, or a baby room done, or something. So ag is another big thing, so I'm glad that Brian brought that up. It's a tremendous thing. It's an industry that's struggling. And the fact that that's in our schools now, so kids can understand it and they know what it's all about, give them a better understanding, I think that's all good. So I agree with most of the people here.
Thank you. Anyone else need extra time on that question? Greg, I'll start with you.
So I just wanted to add that kind of focusing on the high school, obviously that's the career path we're talking about. But I do see a lot of positive things happening in the elementary school too. I have 3 kids that go to Guile currently, and the opportunities that they're given by their teachers, which is extra time and extra effort for the teachers, is amazing. And that'll prepare them. Just to give you an idea, STEM club today, Matt, there's math club, show choir, speaking to the school board, there's a living history. All of those I view as career paths, because they're learning how to learn and how to communicate and how to be part of a group.
Thank you. Krista?
I just have to say too, I don't think that we have a district that doesn't know how to read or write. I attended Gering High School's National Honor Society induction last week, and it was the largest induction that I think I've ever been to. I sat for an hour as they called names and went on stage. So I think that Gering High School is doing an excellent job of having readers and writers as well as their career, as they're pushing forward their career paths as well.
Colleen?
Like I said, I spent 3 long-term subs. One of them was 3 months. The other 2 were 2 months in an English class. I had everywhere from sophomores to seniors. The proficiency has gone down tremendously. When I started at Gering, Mrs. Thompson was in charge of the English department, and you couldn't believe how the kids turned out. That is not the case anymore.
Okay, we'll move on to our next question. Rick, we'll start with you on this one. Gering Public Schools has partnered with Scottsbluff Schools in a number of areas, some extracurricular activities, like notably the swim team. How much farther should collaboration go, and would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the districts?
As far as the collaboration between Scottsbluff and Gering, I think it depends on what subject and what area we're talking about. I don't agree that there should be a consolidation. I think kids staying in the schools that they're in now gives them more of a chance to pursue a career path rather than get lost in the numbers that it would cause. I also feel there's a lot of things that the collaboration unnecessarily breeds, as far as kids being convinced to go from one school to another because of certain activities or events. That's pretty much how I feel about that.
Thank you. John, how much farther should collaboration go, and would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the school districts?
I believe it's it's wonderful that the 2 school districts have been working together, whether it be the swimming team or the bowling team, or, this is giving the kids here in Gering and Scottsbluff an opportunity to do something that they would not be able to do, in one place or the other. I mean, this is, I think it's very positive for our community. It's positive for budget dollars. We have to be fiscally responsible with, we're only given X amount of dollars. So this is giving kids extra things to do without, straining the budget anymore. It also, with the numbers of kids, we're getting to the point we have so many activities and not enough students. Well, there are some students that want to do like a bowling or something like that. It's nice to be able to bring some kids from Scottsbluff or have them work together and put together a team, a swim team, I guess. So I think there's nothing but positives in that. I don't, at this time, I can't really see the 2 districts merging possibly in the future. Everything's about, dollars and cents, and, we'll see what comes down the pipeline. But as of right now, I think we can keep on our own.
Craig, how much farther should collaboration go, and would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the school districts?
Yeah, I think collaboration is always a good thing because you can learn from other people or other experiences that you personally, either as a school district, as a family, or as an individual, haven't had a chance to experience. That being said, I also think there's a big value in having pride in your organization, whatever that may be, whether it be schools that we're talking about, whether it be an athletic team, whether it be your own family, or your business, right? There's something to be said for school pride. And Be Blue and Gold is one of the hashtags I've seen around in the last 5 years, and I think it's important for kids to be able to identify with their school. I also listen to Tony Kornheiser on a podcast, and he always says the answer to all your questions is money, right? So to answer the follow-up of consolidation, no, I'm not in favor of it now. I don't have a crystal ball either to tell you what's going to happen down the road 4, 5, 6 years from now. So no, I am not in favor of consolidation at the moment, but we would have to look at all the circumstances that come down the road. And for me personally, as far as Gering Public Schools, I think we have a great thing going. I think we have a good pride in Gering schools, and I would like to see that grow and continue.
Thank you. Mike, how much farther should collaboration go, and would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the school districts?
Collaboration with certain things, yes. For special sports needs, maybe having certain amount of kids from multiple schools competing together in one team, that would make sense. As far as consolidating the school districts, I don't believe that's a good idea at all. When you have, say you take a classroom of 15 kids, and you have two of those classrooms, fifth grade classrooms, you all of a sudden put those two classrooms together, you've got 30 kids and one teacher. That teacher is no longer able to focus more individual time on each student because that teacher has to focus on 30 students instead of 15. Consolidation of school districts, if it comes purely down to money, that's not what education's about. It's not about the dollars and cents. It's about teaching your children how to be a productive member of society, teaching them what they need to know. There's already some kids that struggle with learning certain subjects because classroom sizes. So consolidating, making classroom sizes even bigger, just to save some dollars, I don't believe is a good idea.
Thank you. Krista, how much farther should collaboration go, and would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the school districts?
Well, I think that collaboration for the CCATs has obviously been a great collaboration. I think that there's great pride between both schools for the CCATs. As far as of the two school districts becoming one, we moved here 16 years ago from Omaha, where Omaha Public Schools has one school district with lots of high schools. I grew up in Boise, Idaho. Boise Public Schools has lots of high schools. So to me, moving here and being so close together, and there was these two separate districts, was a little bit odd. But I have to tell you that the school pride has grown on me. I live in a community that loves their school, they love their community, they are go blue, go gold, and I think that Scottsbluff feels that same way. I think it would be really hard for the two districts to become one. That said, as much as we like to say that that education has nothing to do with money, it has a lot to do with money. I look at the property tax that is right now going through the legislature and what that possibly can do, because right now that is where a huge amount of our funding comes for our schools, and as we lower that property tax, how are we going to fund our districts? So more of our money will have to come from the state.
Thank you.
So right now, no. Future, maybe.
Thank you. Brian, how much farther should collaboration go, and would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the school districts?
I think collaboration has always been on the table, and we, as a board, we've been open to it. Obviously, they've mentioned some instances. Switching our schedule, it has allowed us to align more closely with Scottsbluff's schedule. I know in the past there's been some classes that we've tried to utilize that maybe one district or the other district has had, where we've tried to get kids in and utilize teachers in one or the other to collaborate in that manner. So there are some things along those lines that will always come up, and I think leadership between both districts is good, and we can continue those conversations, and something we always want to do. Consolidation, I don't feel will ever happen. Gering and Scottsbluff are already becoming more and more unique because we're pretty much the only Class B schools in the Panhandle anymore. Our population base continues to shrink in the Panhandle. If we were to merge and become a Class A school by NSAA standards, it will be even more problematic. So there are some other considerations there as well, alongside many, many others, the communities and things of that nature, but mainly competition. I mean, I'm all for it. It has driven us to be the best we can be, and it has driven Gering to push our career academies. It has driven this board to make decisions to give kids and the parents the most choices they can. And that's what we'll continue to do, to be the most competitive we can and offer the most choices.
Thank you. Colleen, how much farther should collaboration go, and would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the school districts?
I love the CCATs. I think they're terrific. The kids are amazing. That collaboration to me is enough. No, I don't think we should ever consolidate with Scottsbluff. And my reasoning goes back to, I went to Henry for grade school. We had 12 rural schools. We were proud. 12 of us little schools, we did really great. We had the county tournaments, and we had all of that. And my kids got the opportunity to go to Cedar Canyon for a year, and then they merged into Gering. And they told us it would be fine. It's not fine. The kids we turned out with those rural schools, they were great kids. Most of them turned out to be really, really successful. I think we lose it in the money. And yes, I know money drives, but I agree with Mike. I don't think money can be the only driving factor. If we want to turn out kids with pride and a work ethic is huge right now. We're having a real problem with that. If we want to turn kids out like that, I think that we need to remain in our districts, and I think we need to really focus on making our district the very best it can possibly be, which is one reason I'm here.
Thank you, Brandon. How much farther should collaboration go, and would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the school districts?
Collaboration and is never a bad thing. It definitely needs to be on a situational basis. CCATs are awesome, but they present a specific instance where facility is what facilitated that merger. Otherwise, Gering would have to come up with a bunch more money to create an indoor facility so that they could do what is happening over there. As far as any academic stuff and sports stuff, Kasi is right. I mean, become a Class A. We talked about people falling through the cracks. I mean, you see the size of Scottsbluff's football team right now and the size of Gering's football team, and you put those together, and there's a lot of kids that are going to be left sitting around and not getting some benefits. We've seen our wrestling program grow tremendously in the last 5 years. We've got a lot more kids coming out. So as far as collaboration through sports and stuff like that, I think CCATS is, like she said, the only place because of the facilities, and it creates that particular situation. I don't think that we will ever consolidate.
Gloria, how much farther should collaboration go, and would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the school districts?
I believe the collaboration, as long as it's good for the students, should be where it needs to be, or should go where it needs to go. I don't feel we should consolidate. I think Gering should stay Gering and Scottsbluff should stay Scottsbluff. Once again, that whole competitive, growing up in Gering, that was probably those were probably the best games that you'd go to, the Gering versus Scottsbluff games. Just the camaraderie, even though we had that rivalry, we still go to work with those same parents the next day. And it's always in good fun. And competition is always great for, to teach these students, and, that way they can bring it into their life situations, for competitive jobs and whatnot. And it builds character. And I think Gering is doing great on its own. I mean, like I said, any opportunities for the kids that Scottsbluff could offer, let the kids have it if they want it. But I don't want to lose that smaller student to teacher ratio that would more than likely be lost, because Scottsbluff is almost twice as big as Gering is. So it's nice to have that smaller community feel.
Thank you. Anyone with anything to add on that before we move to our next question? Okay, John, the next question starts with you. The district has had to secure a line of credit with a local financial institution to protect district cash flows. What do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. The district has had to secure a line of credit with a local financial institution to protect district cash flows. What do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
I'm a business owner, but then again, I'm not a professional at how a school board is run. I know there's state aid, local taxes and state taxes that are fund the school system. A solution, I think it's great that we had a local bank step up and help us through a rough patch. I guess you, as a school district, you just try to be as efficient as possible and, use the dollars in the best, you have the best use for those dollars that are available and try not to go over budget. Basically, that's the job of budgeting, and we probably need to improve on that.
Greg, what do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
So I think in a business setting and a school setting, you're going to have ups and downs, and a line of credit, while not ideal, isn't necessarily an alarm that something is drastically wrong. We may have just had a tough year that we got by and now we're recouping. Now, I can't really speak to that because I haven't been in a lot of committees with the school board. But again, I would go back to leaning on the professionals and staying on budget. That's one thing I did learn both running a family and 2 small businesses is working within a budget. Would I rather have a bigger building to sell fireworks out of with better air conditioning? Absolutely. But if it's not in the budget, we got to put it off until next year. And I think I can bring that perspective to the school as well, where we can maximize what we're doing with the dollars that we have and then move on to the future fiscally responsible.
Thank you. Mike, what do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
I agree with what Greg said. Getting into a line of credit with the bank may not be the end of it all, but being responsible with the dollars that we do have and being responsible in how we spend those dollars, I think is the best way to do it. Also getting some more parent involvement. I know we all have kids that come home and they're doing a fundraiser thing for special things. And the parents are always kind of, oh, not this again, But I think if the parents really got involved and we put together a bigger group of parents that were willing to do a bigger fundraising type of campaign for the kids to maybe alleviate some of those budget needs, I think that might be a good thing.
Thank you. Krista, what do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
Well, I think unfortunately this last year or two, I think there's been some unexpected things that came up in the district that required that. But I also, I was looking at some data, and we're like ranked 49th in the country as far as our districts getting money from the state. Nebraska really, our local school districts really stay within their districts as far as funding. And so the money from the state doesn't just fluctuate. A lot of it's not coming. And so I think that maybe having that, maybe a larger cushion to fall back on when those things arise that are unexpected happen. But I also believe that a school district is not a normal business. When you're looking at how you run a business, a school district is different. And though I've never been a part of the business committee for the school district, I do have lots of family members that are educators, and from what that I have learned and gleaned from them and from what I understand from them, it's not a typical business. So I can't really speak to exactly what, not knowing how it runs.
Thank you. Brian, what do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
Well, I guess I'm on the hot seat on this one. There was a lot of talk about that, obviously, and the last 2 years being COVID years, obviously the district had to expend a lot of money in many cases up front before we got money returned from the federal or the state governments for some expenses. And as we went into the years, the way property taxes are distributed, they come in chunks throughout different times of the year. So when payrolls come, the cash flows are depleted before sometimes we get money from the state. So to protect ourselves, we applied for that line of credit just in case we would need to get it, depending when payrolls might need to be met, so we didn't have to up into the general fund or any other funds. We have not had to do that. Actually, we just came from a business meeting this morning. We're 11% below our budgetary spending for the year so far, and we're projected to have $2 million in our general fund by the end of this year. So we have done a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, I think our superintendent, our new director of finance this year that has found funds and savings, a way to apply for new revenue streams and write grants to help pay for things that have contributed to that. So thankfully, we haven't had to tap into that, but it was just a stopgap measure in case we might need to tap into it.
Thank you. Colleen, what do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
Well, first of all, I do know that cash flow is an issue. I've been a business owner twice. I've owned 2 different businesses. And it is hard. Cash flow is hard. And so I don't see any alarm with having a line of credit. I think that's smart business practice. I'm not familiar with a lot of the ways school districts are funded and how everything comes together. So that is something that I will have to learn, being on the board and understanding that. But I do understand that budgeting is huge, regardless what you're involved in. And so making sure that things are properly budgeted, make sure you stay within that budget, and of course have your slush funds for when things do go wrong, because that's life. But I think that that's something that I need to learn about, and things like that. But I do know that cash flow can be a huge issue. And so I am glad that they do have the line of credit and a local bank works with them.
Brandon, what do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
Can't speak on how to stop it, how to prevent it, how to help it, because I don't know how it all works. I don't know, I know grants and state funding, stuff like that, but I don't know how we go about getting it, what programs are available each time. I don't know what our budgetary restraints and stuff are. And until I'm into that and understand it from those sides, I can't really speak on how to stop it.
Gloria, what do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
Well, as resource director at the Housing Authority, I understand the depending on state fundings, and because we depend on a lot of the HUD funding, we're never given what we're promised. So a lot of what we do depends on what they give us. So budgeting is very important. We always try to fall below that budget just to make sure that, you do have enough money to, for payroll and expenses and whatnot. A lot of times, just writing the wave out, I know a lot of the teachers with more tenure had retired, so that'll definitely help. And it was great that they thought ahead and did get that bank loan and have a backup plan. So I think they did great with that.
Rick, what do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
Well, I have served on a school board before, like from 92 to 2000 in a smaller district, and I know a lot of things have changed since then, but I do understand a little bit about it. I know state aid is huge and depends on the numbers of students that you have in the school, and I know it fluctuates a lot even with that. I think one of the things we can do, we can be smarter with the classes that we offer. We do want to do everything we can for the students and give them all the options that we can, but always at the heart of the matter is finances. And when we have a physics teacher with 1 student in a class for a semester or 2 students, which is the case this year, I think we're not being very wise with the way we're using our money or our resources.
Thank you. Anyone else with thoughts on funding before we move to another topic? Okay. Greg, you're up next. What do you believe the board's stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
I think that's a difficult question that goes back to reaching out to parents and getting their feel. I also think it's something, like we said, with parental involvement, has to be integral in that. With the health standards, there's a lot of variables, but I do understand, if I'm correct, that it's on a local level, which gives me some some encouragement that we will have some say-so in when and what gets implemented. I don't feel that it's really the school's position or responsibility to teach kids about sex or about gender identity. Just like we said before in other subjects, I don't think we should be teaching our kids how to think or what to think. I think we need to teach them how to think so they can figure it out on their own. And as a Catholic, that will definitely guide my decisions as a board member.
Thank you. Mike, what do you believe the board's stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
I kind of agree with Greg on this one as well. That is a difficult question. When should we start teaching this to children at a certain age? It's difficult because all children develop differently. There are some children that develop earlier than others. So to put a blanket statement over this and say, what age should we start talking about this? What grade should we start talking about this? That makes it very difficult for not only the school, but for the parents, because then the parents have to talk to their children about certain things that the kids have no idea about. Oh, we learned about this in school today, and then the parents are hit with something that they weren't prepared to talk about with their children at that young of an age. There's no wrong or right answer to this. You can't put something like this on a specific age or a specific grade because children develop at different ages. And again, with gender identities and that type of things, this can be a very confusing subject for children at too young of an age.
Thank you. Krista, what do you believe the board's stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
I was really concerned when because I think that we have a tendency now to get, we see hot topics, right? They come across our social media, and so I was very concerned. And so I actually pulled the health directives that the state has given out, and I was really relieved to find out that they are absolutely, the state has given all the power back to local boards, and it says not only local boards, but parents. And so I think that those decisions, I'm grateful that it won't be just the board's decision to make, that the age and appropriateness will be not just our board's decision, but parents as well. I also have concern. The board brought, years ago when my son was in high school, this was several years ago, and my daughter and son were in high school, brought a guest speaker that was going to speak to the high school. And the night before, she was a sex education teacher, and the night before, the parents were allowed to come and listen to what their children were going to hear the next day. And there was 20 parents in the auditorium the night before, which speaks to the fact that, yes, parents want an opinion, but again, not all of our students are having the opportunity to have their parents teaching them these things. Yes, we want it to be taught in the home first, but that's not always the case.
Brian, what do you believe the board's stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
Well, I think, when the state Board of Education took on that project, they wanted to try and develop and maybe modernize some standards, and they kind of brought on a lot of controversy, and some of it was warranted, what they were trying to do. But lost in the bigger picture was the message that ultimately it is down to the local school board control. And as we've said, that's a relationship with your community. And I think the message here is that we have to continually listen to our parents. And I don't think there's a blanket age. We have to obviously educate and continually educate our kids to be safe and healthy and have standards in our school. I do not agree it's appropriate to teach them about gender identity and fluidity is my personal belief. I don't think that's something that I would trust to have someone have that conversation with my child, but I think that would happen at home, and, you know, that also trust our educators that we are creating critical, independent thinkers, and that they could, you know, feel comfortable asking a teacher or asking an administrator and bringing a parent in to talk to them about that.
Colleen, what do you believe the board's stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
I am guided in my answer by the fact that I am a Christian, and I don't believe it's the school's job to introduce any of this. I believe that is up to parents, and I believe that parents are the ones that have to decide how they're going to handle that situation. I don't believe the school has that job. I don't think it's their job at all. When we go back to health standards and that whole mess with the Nebraska Department of Education, they have not abandoned that. They have put it on the shelf, and it is going to be something we're going to have to face. But I don't believe it's something that the school should be involved in. Health should be cleaning, taking a shower, things like that in the elementary grades. Yes, in the high school, these kinds of issues are going to be discussed, but they shouldn't be introduced by the school. That's not the school's job. So while they can be discussed in the high school setting by students, that's fine, and you know, whatever happens there, high school, we're preparing them to be adults. That's a little bit different situation. I don't believe it's ever the school's responsibility to deal with health standards, gender fluidity, or anything like that. I don't think that's the school's job.
Brandon, what do you believe is the board stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
This is a very heavy question. This is something that's, as we talked earlier, being popularized all over social media and stuff. As a medical background, the cognitive development of a child all the way up, you know, past 18, is a difficult thing. Ages, race, sex, all makes different determinations as when they will be ready. Introduced too early, and you can seriously damage. They'll question. You can open doors that they're not ready for, and it can lead to further issues. With that being said, this is also close to me. I had a brother that was a sister that's transgender that has since passed away. I see it from a different perspective as well, but I also know that he never would have been okay with being approached this at school by anybody. This was an in-house thing. We dealt with it as a family. And when he was ready to deal with it on a public manner, then we did. So no, I don't believe that the school system has the right to decide that. This is something that should be addressed at home, as it has been for many, many, many years. And if it does come up, I would just like to make sure people are very open and very understanding of how sensitive this subject is and how sensitive kids are to these kind of topics.
Thank you. Gloria, what do you believe the board's stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
I believe the board stance on when sex education should be taught should be evaluated every year. Things are constantly changing every year. Our kids are have those phones in their hands where they could pull up anything. And if they pull up something that they don't know what it is, I'd rather have them educated and know, okay, I shouldn't be watching that, or not, oh, what is this? Let me see what it is. If they have some general knowledge of what sex education is, it might prevent them from looking for answers on their own. If they have a general, okay, this is what it is, this is what's happening, and maybe they won't be so scared when it does happen to them, when things come up, or, you know, just anything can come up. I raised 5 boys, and a lot of the questions that they had for me, I didn't have answers to. So it was nice to be like, you know, you did learn about that, let's go over this, do you have any questions? So having that openness with your child, I think, helped a lot as well. Gender identity, I think I don't think it should be taught. I think it should be, there should be somebody there to answer their questions once again. If they have any questions, they should have, they should know who they can go and talk to in case parents don't know what the answers are. So, yeah, they should have somebody there to help them through anything.
Thank you. Rick, what do you believe the board's stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
Well, because of my age and experience, I have quite a conservative view on these issues. As far as the age for sex education, I think when they're talking about survival of the species, that's when you should be talking about that. And as far as the other issues, I think the parental involvement that others have mentioned should come into play. I know it's an ever-changing society, but I think the line needs drawn somewhere.
Thank you. John, what do you believe the board's stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
I believe it's the parents' responsibility to have, the sex education talk. I guess, in this day and age, you've got, everybody has a means to, get a hold of the school board, whether it be a parent or whatever. I think this, the school board can talk, address this issue in the future, if it needs to, pick, age or change the age that these sex education talks need to be made. The gender ID thing, I think that's a sensitive subject. I think we're, like Brandon was saying, it's been going on for, since the beginning of time, but people in society, we don't really know how to, address it. And I think, having school, you have school nurses and you have school counselors, having kids feel comfortable, coming to these people with their questions. I think that helps them grow tremendously, and I guess that's my stance.
Thank you. Anyone with any other thoughts on that before we move on? Brandon?
In respect to the unfortunate extreme availability of information to people that should not have it, that is a parental issue. They should be monitoring their kids, monitoring their devices and stuff like that. I can promise you, after being on the psych unit and dealing with kids that have been molested and been exposed to things that they should not have been shown, I dealt with a 9-year-old that his emotional and mental state was so distracted because not only did he not understand from a cognitive age, but he didn't understand from an emotional age what was really going on. And for someone else to introduce this at the wrong time, at the wrong age, in the wrong way, can be detrimental to that child's continued development into an adult.
Thank you. It's time. Okay, we'll move on to our next question. Mike, I think we're to you. It was brought up in one of the letters, the grade scale at the high school has been much more rigorous than other schools in the past, which some have said hurts graduating seniors moving on to post-secondary education. Do you think the scale should be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales, and why do you feel that way?
It should conform to more post-secondary scales, just because it's confusing for a kid, when they go through a high school and they have a different grading scale than other schools, and then they get into college and all of a sudden there's a different grading scale. That creates a little bit of unneeded confusion to a kid that's already moving out of home and going to college and learning new things and learning to live on their own and just facing the world in a different way. I think we should have it standardized towards more college and university scales.
Krista, do you think the grading scale should be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales?
I'm a little bit torn on this. It changed to the 90, 94, whatever it is, when my kids first started here in Gering. And so my kids have all gone through with this grading scale. And I would actually, you would think that they would not want it. But my daughter, Savannah, who is a junior at Gering High School right now, she said it makes her a better student. She works harder. And as I'm saying this, I'm watching our timers shake their heads and say, yes, yes, that it makes them a better student. They work harder. They manage their time better, knowing that the grade in which they have to receive in order to keep their A is what it is. So though that when they get to college, they only have to have a 90 to 100 in order to keep that A, they are used to working at a level in which a 94 to 100 is what an A is to them. So me, as a parent, I'm like, 90 to 100, great, that's an A. But as a parent of 4 high schoolers that have gone through, I can absolutely say on their behalf that they love the system.
Brian, should the grading scale be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales?
Well, I can tell you from experience, when we modified our schedule, one of the issues that came up was our grading scale. And we polled our students and the parents, and the students overwhelmingly wanted to keep the grading schedule or level. 2 of my daughters were valedictorians at Gering, fortunately. And I will tell you, Gering students are well known when you go to other parts of the state or go to colleges. They know the rigor that is involved. Now, maybe Gering students are gluttons for punishment. I don't know. But they look at the ACT scores. And I know that maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, 90 to 100, I get it. I mean, they go to college, that's what it is. That's what it is across the river. You can say you've got a 4.0. That's what the kids wanted, and it was really a surprise to me. It does make them work hard. It causes a lot of stress. I mean, my girls, their senior year, there are some issues with, in some cases, some of the kids might not take the rigor, and those are conversations we need to have addressed if they're worried about that. But it does push the kids, and so that is something that we asked them about and they wanted.
Colleen, should the grading scale be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales?
I think the grading scale should remain the same and should be that rigorous. I think, what are we trying to turn out here? We're trying to turn out the best of the best. And we can't do that by constantly lowering the bar. And so I can tell you that it does help kids to have the 94 to 100 grading scale if you're an overachiever and if you're shooting for the stars. Because I've had recruiters from the Naval Academy tell me that if they had a kid, and unfortunately my son lost out first round to those 3 that went to service academies. My son was at Scotts Bluff, where they had the 90 to 100 and wasn't that great. But they looked at the grading scale. And so he lost out. And then it made him work harder, and he was accepted the next time. But the point of the matter is, what are you trying to turn out? And I truly believe that we need to do that. We need to leave that grading scale high. We need to make those kids work hard. Because yes, the pressure is there. But guess what? Life is full of pressure. And if you're going to be an overachiever, you're going to push. And you're going to get it. And you're going to have a sense of accomplishment. And that right there is victory.
Thank you. Brandon, should the grading scale be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales?
It should be close to post-secondary. It is a detriment to kids because although it makes some people strive to get better, that is a minority. The majority of the student body does not view it that way. They don't, that strive, that pressure, along with hormones and body changes and dealing with social stances and stuff like that, it makes it difficult as is. The new way school is done, through so much stuff, my kids come home and I can't help them because I don't have a book. And if the internet's not working or something's happening, then my daughter is 12 and is gonna drive herself insane because she wants that 4.0. She does, she drives herself. My son is equally intelligent, but he does not have the same kind of drive. Now, I'm not saying that he shouldn't drive to be there, but for example, you have to have a certain grade point average, I think it's a 3.0, in order to do sports in Division I. And not all student athletes put in the time and have the time in order to do that academically. Am I saying they shouldn't? No. But just not everybody's built the same. And I think a majority of the students get hurt by that lack of room to make it work for them.
Thank you. Rita, should the grading scale be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales?
Having gone through that same grading scale myself, it did push me. It pushed me really hard. I think it made me be the overachiever and the perfectionist and to look for all those other aspects to make it, to hit that A every time. But on the other hand, it doesn't give our students a level playing field with even just our neighbors here to the north. It's not fair. And I know life's not fair, but it's not fair to our students that we are setting the bar this high when they can have the same opportunities that a student with a lower grade has right across the river. So I would be for changing it back to the 90 to 100. I mean, if the student wants to hit that 94, that 95, 96, great, but also give that chance to the 91s and 92s. That in Gering, if they had a 92, they'd have a B, and in Scottsbluff, they could have a 91 and have an A. So colleges look at that. And once again, that whole level playing field, I think, is very important.
Thank you. Rick, should the grading scale be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales?
Well, first of all, I think in the final synopsis of a person's career, it doesn't matter whether they got an A or a B. It's a matter about work ethic and other things that can be taught in the schools. I do think it should say rigorous. When a person or student approaches a 70%, they're approaching failing in either situation. And in some classes, that's only one paper away or one assignment away. I don't think it will help us to use a soft hand when it comes to this. I think being soft and taking the pressure off has led to some of the issues that we are facing now.
Thank you. John, should the grading scale be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales?
I think it should be more like a post-secondary grade scales. I think it's all about perspective. I honestly believe that one chemistry teacher could, from another school, could grade a class as a 90, and another teacher, a 94, would be equally the same grade. I mean, it's all about perspective. It's all how you set your class up. And I think we're doing a disservice to the majority of the students in Gering. I mean, the top 5%, they're always going to be the top 5%. They will probably succeed with A's regardless of the grading scale. It's the kids you lose that are the 70% or the kids that struggle for the 80%. I think you're losing these kids. And what's to say they're not going to jump the river? We want our students to stay in Gering, and we want to be able to serve them. But if they perceive that school is easier, it's just a number. But I know of children that have went over there to attend school just because they believe that it's an easier grading scale. So, no, I don't think we should keep it.
Greg, should the grading scale be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales?
This is a subject I would have to reach out to teachers and parents and get more input, because it's not a topic I have on my agenda when I talk to parents of my kids, friends at school and such. If the teachers get back to me and say that they think pushing our students harder benefits them and they see better results and more attentive nature in class, I think it's a benefit. I also would like to see some of the research or the numbers of if our students are missing out on scholarship opportunities, that could be a big factor. But if it's just so you have an A, I got a 4.0 in high school, Bill. You don't know if I did or not, right? Nobody knows what grade you got in high school once you get into your career path. I didn't get a 4.0, by the way. But that being said, I don't see a problem with having a more rigorous grading scale. I would have to have some knowledge of what the benefit is in the classroom and to the students, because I think ultimately that's what we're all up here for, is to benefit the student and to help the teachers teach. So if I heard that a rigorous grading scale benefits everybody, great, keep it. If we're missing dollars and people are missing opportunities to join college or to go into certain careers because of their grades, then I'll stand at a different point. But until I get that knowledge base built up, I can't comment one way or the other.
Thank you. Anyone with any more thoughts on the grading scale before we move forward? Mike, good? Krista?
I do have one thought. Out of my 4 children, they weren't all 4.0 kids. And my one daughter, what I noticed with her, with the grading, is that she was more apt to go in and ask for help. If she was on that bubble between a B and a C or an A and a B, it made her more proactive in pursuing the higher grade and pursuing that relationship with her teacher. So I think that that's another positive that comes from the higher grading.
Brian?
I think maybe to address John's point and Chris's point, I mean, I have 4 kids and the other 2 definitely were not valedictorians, so just to set that clear. If there's perception that kids are leaving to go to Scottsbluff because of the easier grading level, there's a bigger problem afoot because there are ample opportunities to get kids help. And we talked a lot about parental involvement. That's where parental involvement starts, and we have programs to help kids. So I think there's other things behind the scenes, behind kids saying it's easier somewhere else.
Thank you. Colleen, you good?
I'm good.
Brandon?
Just real quick, I'd like to point out that you can tell from the people in this room too that parental involvement is huge. And unfortunately, not every child has a parent like we have sitting here that with some valedictorians and stuff. And like I said, I push my daughter and my son and they want to do good. The grading scale should not come into effect in that. It should be on the parents that should be driving. And as he said, taking on that responsibility to get extra help, get extra programs, not just worry about the grading scale. But I do believe that they are being slightly slighted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? To clarify, I was not a valedictorian either, so. So we're down to our last question. I thought we would do long division for this one, if you get, no, I'm just kidding.
Bill.
Start with you, Krista. No, I'm just kidding.
Math was not my...
This is our last question, and I'll make this one not as much about the issues, but maybe a little bit of a fun one to end on for you before we get to your closing statements. So, Krista, you're elected, and we fast forward 4 years from now. How would you define success?
Okay, so I've heard a lot tonight about the other side of the river. I think that I would find success if we, as right here in Gering, Nebraska, that we didn't care what was happening on the other side of the river, that we were proud, that we weren't comparing ourselves, that all we cared about is building on what we have here. We have amazing teachers. We have an amazing administration. We have a superintendent that all unanimously was chosen. And building on that and building on what we have so much that we can be building on. And not worrying about what is happening anywhere else. It's probably one of my biggest pet peeves, having moved here and not being a born and raised Bulldog, is that there's this constant comparison between the two. And I think that we just need to come to a place that we are Gering Bulldogs, that we are Gering School District, and we are happy for whatever is happening with them. We are happy to be sea cats with them, but we are blue and gold, and that's all that matters. And so at the end of 4 years from now, if we can say, if I'm elected, that there's this vision that we're Gering, then I think that that will be successful.
Thank you. Brian, at the end of your next four-year term, if you're reelected, how would you define success?
Ditto. We have come through 2 years of unprecedented issues with COVID, and it was difficult. I mean, we took a lot of barbs. We were uncharted territory. We did the best we could. We wanted to keep kids in school. Our staff was amazing. Our teachers kept teaching, our administrators kept managing, and our custodians kept cleaning. And we have a superintendent and central office administrators who are phenomenal educators, who are excited and proud to be Gering Bulldogs and want and are part of the fabric of this community. And as Krista said, we are excited to keep moving this district forward. Gering is a destination district. When we go to Omaha for our convention or we go to Lincoln for a governmental thing, people ask about Gering. I mean, Gering is the buzz of the town, our aviation program, our FFA kids. I mean, everything we do, they're like, what is Gering doing? I mean, they're like, how do you guys do this in the district this size? We are doing things that has not been done before, and we want to continue that momentum. And our superintendent, all the way down to teachers, custodial, and students, we want to do that and be proud of being a Gering Bulldog.
Thank you. Colleen, if you're elected at the end of your four-year term, how would you define success?
I'm going to walk into a classroom, and the kids are going to be able to read proficiently and like champs. I'm going to sub in an English class, and they're going to write me a 5-page essay, and it's going to just make me smile. I'm going to walk into a math class, and they're going to know basics, and when I ask them their times tables, they're going to rattle them off. I'm going to walk to the construction site, and I'm going to watch them put together a house and do it really, really well. I'm going to see that maybe they know electrical, maybe they know plumbing. I'm not going to see everybody pushing, everybody's got to go to college, but we're going to see trades. We're going to see kids maybe starting their own businesses in the trades. But my biggest thing would be that the kids love to read and that they can write and that they can do that. And so that's my success. I'm going to walk into a classroom as a sub, and I'm going to see those things.
Thank you. Brandon, if you're elected at the end of a four-year term, how would you define success?
Re-election. No. Honestly, it's hard for me to sit here and speculate on what I would view as successful at that point. I haven't been involved in a school board before. I'm not completely sure what to expect, other than I know that there are changes I'd like to see made. If I can see some of those made, or I can see benefits of me being there and conversating and giving my 2 cents worth, I would view that as having success.
Thank you. Gloria, at the end of your four-year term, if elected, how would you define success?
I would define success if all of the adults would be on more of a united front to represent, like I said, a more united front for the children of the future. A lot right now, there's a lot of division, there's a lot of arguments, there's a lot of animosity, and I would like to see these children need role models. They need somebody to look up to, and if the adults are bickering, fighting, not agreeing, that's just not good for them, because then they start to feel like, oh, well, you know, they start to, I don't want them to start, you know, keep questioning the way they feel that it's wrong or whatnot. If they see adults on a united front, all coming together for their benefits, for their, you know, well-being, that would be success to me, for, you know, to be better role models for these children, and also to get reelected.
Thank you. Rick, if you're elected at the end of a four-year term, how would you define success?
First of all, I think administrative continuity. We've had 3 superintendents in the last 4 years, I believe. We've had turnover in principals. And I would also like to see that continuity include Gering people in those places. We've had our opportunity for those people, and we haven't been able to do that. I think that would get Gering back on the track that most people want to see us on. I'd like to see us back on the block schedule. I think that would eliminate the scheduling conflicts that we have for some classes that are on block and some that aren't on block, and then still equalize the opportunities and still offer the opportunities that we have to students. And I'd like to see us on athletic equality with those across the river in all activities.
Thank you. John, if you're elected at the end of a 4-year term, how would you define success?
I would like to be considered knowledgeable at school board, the way it's run, hopefully my knowledge I'm very proficient at that in 4 years. I would like to see the teachers in our system, have them feel refreshed, have them feel, a little recharged. They've been through a lot in the last few years. I would like teachers that are not in our system to be fighting to get in our system. I want this to be the district that everybody wants to finish their careers at, that everybody wants to be a part of. I want our children that are in our community to want to go to school here. I want kids to try to option in. We're welcoming the members. We have the facilities. We have the educators. To me, that would be considered a success.
Thank you. Greg, if you're elected at the end of a 4-year term, how would you define success?
One of the main ways that I would define success would be to see kids still enthusiastic about learning and learning how to learn. I'm spoiled. I have 3 kids that are still in elementary school and think it's pretty cool to go to school. They love their teachers. We've been blessed with that as a district and as a school. But if that can trickle up to the high school, to the junior high, and stay at the elementary level also, that would be a success for me. I would also see the community organization or camaraderie grow, and that the community knows that I listened to them, and while I may not have agreed or they may not agree with everything I did, I at least listened to their concerns and then did what was best for the greatest number of kids. Because I think ultimately that's the job of a board member and as a school board as a whole, is to not appease everyone, because that's impossible, right, when you're serving a large community, but to do what is best for the greatest number of kids. That would be a success for me in the next 4 years.
Thank you. Mike, if you're elected at the end of a 4-year term, how would you define success?
Success in my eyes would be that the kids that go to school in Gering Public Schools, like Greg said, stay excited all the way from the elementary up through high school. That the kids are learning more, they're learning better, because ultimately this is all about the children. I'd also define success as more parent involvement with the school district, where parents are just as excited about school as their kids are. And, ultimately, the success of the schools is the success of the children.
Thank you. Anyone else with thoughts on that before we go to closing statements? Okay, we will give each of you 1 minute for closing statements. Brian was up next, so Brian, you get to go first with your closing statement.
Well, when I decided to run for school board, it was out of a desire to give back to a place that's given me so much. I graduated from Gering, and all 4 of my kids graduated from Gering as well. Gering Public Schools has given me and our family a great foundation to build our futures. This is why I chose to serve. I didn't choose to run on an agenda. Instead, I wanted to learn about education and find out what made Gering great and what I could do to make it even better. During my time, we've expanded our preschool offerings to full days at all the elementary buildings, established a Links program to provide credit recovery for students, and we have launched our Ag Pathway and FFA program, just to name a few. Serving on the board is a privilege that I take seriously. Our community has shown great support for our schools, and I know the trust they place in us. It's been my pleasure to serve on the board, and I hope that with your vote, I can continue to work because the future is bright for the kids in our district, and they are proud to be Gering Bulldogs.
Thank you. Colleen, 1 minute for a closing statement.
I've enjoyed my 7 years at Gering. I've become a Bulldog. I'm a transplant. I went to Torrington High School. I went to Henry. for grade school. I want to see Gering at the top of the academic ladder. I don't want to see us spending all of our time and resources on kids who don't care. Not that we don't care about the kids, we want them to do their very best, but we want to make sure they know they have to try. I want to see us spend our time and our effort on making sure Gering is at the top of the ladder. They're reading, they're writing, they're doing personal finance, they're doing the trades, they're doing everything, and that we are turning out kids who are contributing members of society, leaders in society, and that's what we're doing. And so that's why I'm running, and that's why I would appreciate your vote. I'm bringing a special perspective, being a sub, almost full-time now for 4 years, from Gering High School. And so I'm right before they enter society. And so I would appreciate your vote on May 10th.
Thank you. Brandon, 1 minute for a closing statement.
I would just like to say that I'm here as an open mind, an open ear, and an open voice for the students and the parents of this community. That's my number one goal. I feel that that has not been addressed here of late. I want our school district to flourish. I want our children to flourish. And I think through that is going to come with an open ear and an open heart for people in their situations. And I hope they come to me, and so that I can address these issues with other board members if I'm elected. It's a struggle to continually see things degrade from your perspective and from other people's perspective that you talk to in certain situations. And I would like to have the opportunity to try to correct some of those and to improve myself with some of these people up here possibly. Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria, 1 minute for a closing statement.
Hey, I decided to run to be able to bring my perspective, a different perspective to the board and to represent. I also would like to make changes and be a part of something that really does affect the lives of many. With my children, a couple of my children still in school, I really do want to make a change. I want to give back to the community. Gering's been an amazing place to live. I've lived here since I was in 6th grade, and all of my kids graduate, the ones that have graduated from Gering. I myself graduated from Gering, and we are Gering Bulldogs to the core. And I would love the opportunity to give back if voted in.
Thank you. Rick, 1 minute for a closing statement.
Okay. I believe I stand for transparency and honesty. Being a coach for several years in different sports has also given me a firsthand view of the direction and guidance that kids need to mature into young adults as a positive, contributing member of society. I'm freshly retired after 18 and a half years of service for Gering schools, and because of this, I feel I have an insight, a unique insight, that sees strengths and weaknesses of our school. I also feel I have an obligation to represent what the faculty actually requires to do the job they've been hired to do. This includes the collaboration and necessary training without time-consuming agendas that satisfy job justification. I feel I also have an obligation to represent the student body in making sure they receive a quality education that prepares them for a chosen career while having a positive experience.
Thank you. John, 1 minute for a closing statement.
True story. 20 years ago, my wife and I moved here to Gering. It was because of the school system. My wife's originally from Omaha. She was in education there, and give her my hats off to her because she knocked on doors, asked administrators, teachers, interviewed people, and we finally decided on that we wanted Gering to be where our kids receive their education. I can't say enough good things about the Gering system. 2 of our children graduated as valedictorians of their respective classes. I believe the educators, the teachers, and there are many of them along the way, instilled the love of learning in them. My children felt like they were very prepared, like they had the tools to go to college or continue their education in the next endeavor. I want to thank GPS for that. So this is one reason that I would like to have the opportunity to serve this community and keep Gering moving in the right direction and continue their success.
Thank you. Greg, 1 minute for a closing statement.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity, by the way, to be in front and address some of these issues for the constituents. I'm running for Gering School Board because with 3 children currently enrolled in Gering schools, I have a vested interest in the success of our schools. As an owner of 2 businesses, I feel I offer a depth of knowledge that will help guide Gering Public Schools to achieve excellence in the years to come. Additionally, having my wife Jill in education for the last 16 years, 14 of those at the Gering High School, I have a unique advantage of viewing and understanding the school system through the lenses of both an educator and a parent. With your vote on May 10th, I can work together with other members of this board to help Gering Public Schools continue to live up to their slogan of having learners today and leaders tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, 1 minute for a closing statement.
So the reason I decided to do this was much like Greg. I have 3 children, young children in the school system. I love seeing my daughters learn. I love seeing how excited they get about school. I love seeing that they love being at Guile Elementary specifically. I love seeing that in my children, and I really want to see that in everybody's children. I really want to see that Gering Public Schools continues to be a great school for kids to go to. And I really want to see Gering achieve more and offer more for kids. I also would like to really see parents get involved more with the schools. Because when parents are there with the kids, they see the kids see their parents there. The kids get even more excited about that. And I think that's a great thing.
Thank you. Krista, 1 minute for a closing statement.
16 years ago, when we moved here, we, like the Mazers, we went door to door and house to house, and fellow employees that my husband was working with, asking where do we want our children to go to school. And it was a resounding, you want to be in Gering Public Schools. And so this is where we have built our home. We have made the decision as our children, we have 1 left in the nest, and we are now building our home that we will retire here and stay here forever. And so it's not just for my own children that I want to see Gering Public Schools thrive, but for our community that I'm a part of. I've continued to go and read in the elementary schools that my kids are no longer there. I served on booster clubs. My job now is the volunteer coordinator at the Midwest Theater, so I am an advocate for volunteerism. I've served on several boards. I understand what it's like to be a silent voice and then also know when to speak. And so I would really love the opportunity to be a voice for Gering Public Schools.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of our candidates running for Gering Public Schools Board of Education for participating in tonight's forum. Greg, Brian, John, Krista, Rick, Mike, Gloria, Brandon, Colleen, thank you all for being here. We hope you at home, this helps you in deciding who you wish to vote for. As a reminder, in the May 10th primary election, you'll be allowed to vote for 3 candidates. The top 6 vote getters in the primary election will advance to the November general election. This candidates forum is one of several being presented by the Government Affairs Committee of the Scottsbluff-Gering United Chamber of Commerce. We again would like to thank the Rural Radio Scottsbluff staff for recording this forum so you can view it, the timers, students from Gering Public Schools for volunteering, the Chamber staff, and the Gering Civic Center for hosting us this evening. On behalf of the Scottsbluff-Gering United Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee, and for my co-chair Don Wolf, I'm Bill Boyer. Thank you for joining us, and remember, get out and vote.